A lot of people were thinking that Nintendo would become the next Sega. I'll make a Red Ring of Death video more about the Wii U and how it affected Nintendo terribly. The Wii U is truly a console that Nintendo learned from, but the Wii U didn't fail because it was a terrible console. It had a pretty good price that was under that of the competition at the time. It had some pretty decent games, and it actually had third-party games at first. So why did the Wii U fail? Let's go ahead and look at the history on how the Wii U was built and how it got to where it was. Thankfully, Nintendo has a really big PTSD for what happened with the Wii U, and they fixed all the issues now. If they didn't, I don't think that Nintendo would be the Nintendo that we see today. So anyways, let's get to it. The Wii U's development can be dated all the way back to 2008, as the Wii was becoming extremely loved, and it was selling like crazy. Sort of how we see the Nintendo Switch selling today. But slowly, after Microsoft fixed the Red Ring of Death issue on the 360, and Sony began fixing their flaws also, with the price and all that stuff, they began to gradually pick up and get back their audience. One of the flaws that Nintendo wanted to fix was finally having HD on their console, because the Wii didn't really have HD. The team also got inspired later on, because of the Wii disc tray having a blue light, to have a way to have notifications show up on the controller. At first, there was a display, and it was only going to be mostly used for notifications, for messages, all that stuff. But as time went on, it became this second screen where you can play games and make it more interactive to have a unique experience. In 2009, Miyamoto hinted that there would be a next-gen console with the ability to have 3D. Now, for those of you that don't know, during like the 2009s and 2008s and 2010s, 3D was a very big thing, especially on TVs. People thought that that would be the future. Having 3D on your TV was going to be a normal thing. Of course, now we know that that didn't catch on at all, but back then, it was just incredible. Nintendo's plan was to unveil their console at E3 2011. Before that, it was just called Project Cafe. Project Cafe was said to be an HD console that can play Wii games, and sort of like we have rumors and leaks all the time, reports began flooding in that there would be a tablet-like controller to accompany the console. But other rumors suggested that there would be an updated GameCube controller. I guess also happened. And indeed, at E3 2011, Project Cafe was unveiled to be the Wii U. There were no first-party titles announced there, but there were some very big third-party developers that were talking about what they would do and bring to the Wii U. But 2 days after the presentation, there was already a warning that something was wrong, because the stock for Nintendo would drop by 10%. And it hasn't been that low in almost 5 years at that time, when the Wii was first released. On September 13th of 2012, Nintendo announced that the Wii U would launch later that year on November 18th in the United States, and November 30th for European regions, and oddly enough, on December 8th for Japan. You would think that Japan would get it first because, you know, Nintendo is in Japan, but I guess they wanted for America to get it first. The original price of the Wii U was $299. There was also a deluxe version in black for $349. So yeah, unlike the previous consoles that we talked about, this one was very affordable. Even the deluxe version is cheaper than the PS4 at the time, so there is no issue there. But a year later, after the launch of the Wii U, the PS4 and Xbox One would be released, and they would be selling like crazy. Now this is where Nintendo began to see numbers just falling even more, and Nintendo began reporting loss after loss. One time in 2014, Nintendo reported a loss of $500 million, and eventually Nintendo was removed from the top ranking brands on innerbrands.com, which shows what type of brands are developing and getting better and growing a lot, sort of like Social Blade for companies. So yeah, embarrassingly, Nintendo was losing to companies like eBay and PayPal and Lego and fucking Colgate, the toothpaste maker. So yeah, it was not good. Over those years, people like me began to think that Nintendo was going to turn into Sega and only make games for other consoles, but that wouldn't really make any sense, because that's not really how Nintendo rolls. So in my personal theory, I believe that Nintendo is just going to stop in total. But not long later, reports began to flood in that Nintendo was already working on another console. At the time, it was called the Nintendo Fusion, and later Miyamoto said an official codename was the Nintendo NX. And of course, as we know it now, the Nintendo Switch. Not long after the Nintendo Switch presentation happened, the Wii U was discontinued for good. And thanks to stuff like Pokemon Go and the NES and SNES Classic and the Nintendo Switch, Nintendo got extremely lucky. This is a company that back in the day you would think would go into bankruptcy. They would become like Toys R Us or Blockbuster, or just turn into Sega, just way smaller, but they actually survived. Seeing a company grow after they fall is pretty rare. Like honestly, especially at these numbers. Why exactly did the Wii U fail? Well, as we've heard from many people over the years, the most popular thing that the Wii U was known for was not really having any third-party games. At first, there was no issue. There were third-party games, but companies just began backing out. And you didn't really see that many powerful relationships that we see today with the Switch. Yeah, there was Activision and EA, but what people also wanted was Bethesda, Rockstar, those types of companies. So that's really where it hit Nintendo hard. Other than that, Nintendo's marketing was very off point, and it was very not Nintendo-like and very not company-like. And that's not to insult Nintendo, that's just constructive criticism. The Wii U's ads mostly showed families and little kids, and that doesn't really look cool to teens. I think one of the biggest ironies though in all of this is that for the most part, the people that owned a Wii U were mostly adults. Let's be honest. I've seen like a few families here and there, but mostly the people that had them were the hardcore Nintendo fans, the people that grew up with Nintendo with the nostalgia. But this still had an effect and did turn off gamers. And this was actually foreshadowed a long time ago in a Nintendo Power magazine. And I'll read you what it said. I only found out about this thanks to my guy, Angry Video Game Nerd. So thanks, nerd. And speaking of him, YouTube actually plays a very big part in why the Wii U failed, and I'll talk about that right after this quote. So what it says was, "It is quite apparent what an active and important role marketing plays in the video game industry. I have to wonder, what are you thinking when marketing the N64, because this was a Nintendo Power magazine, to elementary school gamers? You risk alienating gamers 15 and up. You should target older gamers because you'll also target younger ones, since the younger audience perception of coolness often depends on what the older teenage audience thinks is cool." And honestly, that's pretty true, that's pretty accurate. Now the way that YouTube plays into this whole Wii U situation is that even till this day, Nintendo isn't really YouTube friendly. Yeah, there's some moments when Nintendo won't detect that you're playing their games, but back then, you wouldn't just get demonetized, your video would get striked. And that is really bad. And there's no honest reason, at least from what I can see, on why Nintendo would do this. You don't have to pay them anything, they're playing it, they're getting paid already, so all you have to do is just watch people say, hey, this game actually looks pretty cool, I want to play it. So Nintendo really messed up during that time. Thankfully, stuff has gotten better, and me personally, I have been able to upload footage sometimes. Like as you can see here, I'm actually having footage, there's no problem. But there's some moments when it can happen, just really random. So yeah, now in total the Wii U sold 13 to almost 14 million units. The Switch right now is almost at 6 million. And that's pretty embarrassing because the Wii U has been out for 5 years. The Switch has only been out for 7 months, and it's almost half of what the Wii U is. So it shows that Nintendo has improved. They've gained back the trust of their customers, but it also shows how bad the Wii U was selling. And imagine, these were non-holiday days. So when Black Friday comes around and Christmas, I can't imagine what's gonna happen. Now for the Wii U, Nintendo actually believed that it would hit 100 million units, which is ironic because Microsoft thought that the Xbox One would hit 100 million units. Yeah, only the humble people. Only they get there. But aside of, thank you guys for watching, and I will see you in the next one.